Yo, good morning and welcome to the SitRep for 24th of Feb 2022. Doing an early morning, well, not that early, but it's about 8:30, 8:39 Australian Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, a bit earlier than I usually do them. And that's because there's a lot of stuff going on, and in particular something that's kind of pertinent for the east coast of Australia today. So I thought I'd throw that up. So again, I'm doing this on Instagram and on YouTube, and I usually focus on the Instagram camera. So if you're watching this on YouTube and thinking, why is this guy like not looking at me? Why does he look confused, looking off into the distance? That's why. Ooh, fancy desk now that moves. All right. So jumping into it this morning, going to start off with some weather event stuff that's happening in Australia at the moment. So I usually like to chuck in these weather things. I think that they're pretty important. I think weather's something we should keep our mind on, or at least natural events, so natural disasters and weather and stuff like that. Hello, dog. Yeah, and I've been talking a lot about the European storms that have been happening, and especially the storms in the UK. But we are getting this sort of stuff happen here in Australia as well. We do have a propensity for extreme weather events down here. So it's not anything new for us, but right now we're getting copped. Oh, we're copping a lot of rain, especially for those of you up north, up in Queensland, in northern New South Wales. A lot of rain came down last night. So there's about 300 millimeters of rain in a 6-hour event. I mean, there's been a lot more outside of that, but in one 6-hour block, there's 300 millimeters. So to put that in perspective, that's kind of like, like 2 months of good rain happening in 6 hours. That's a lot of wet stuff coming from the sky. So obviously flash flooding going on. There's been one death reported of a lady who got stuck in a car in floodwater. So if you are in and around floodwater, do not drive through it. Can't say this enough to people. I get the question sometimes from people when I'm talking about these sort of events, like, how is it safe? What level is safe to do it at? No level is safe to drive through with floodwater unless you're very experienced. If you're asking the question, then you're not experienced enough to be driving through floodwater. Don't do it. If you've got a very capable four-wheel drive that has a snorkel on it and that you've done it before and you know the road and you know the road condition, then maybe think about it. But apart from that, I just say do not drive through floodwater at any stage. And this happens in my area. We get floods all the time. We've had probably in the last 2 years 4 or 5 flood events, and every single time somebody, at least one person, gets stuck in these flood events. And that means that emergency services have to get reacted to it. It means that other people have to put their lives on the line to rescue someone. So yeah, if you're stuck on the other side of floodwater in your car and you're like, I have to get to work or whatever, nothing is so important that you should risk your life and potentially the life of others in order to cross through water. So, hey, Commie Hunter, the road up from my house was flooded. Yeah. A lot of floods going on the East Coast at the moment. So, yeah, like I said, unless you're very capable at doing it, you're experienced in doing it, and I would even recommend that you're doing it in pairs, that you've got other people there that can you can self-rescue. I just say don't do it. Don't cross any floodwaters. So that's about to hit again today. We're expecting a lot more rain coming. Some of the predictions that have been thrown out, there's a few different weather modeling websites out there, but I've seen everything from 200 to 500 millimeters expected in the next 24 hours. So that again is a lot of rain that's going to be hitting, and that's coming further down. So that's coming even down south New South Wales where I'm at. So be careful of that. Unless we can walk on water, there's no point. Well, if you're doing that, maybe you can turn some of that water into wine as well. Yeah, so be safe out there. If you're in the eastern part of Australia, you're going to get hit by a lot of rain in the next 24 hours. down here in the sort of greater Canberra type region or southern New South Wales region, we're expected to get rain for the next week. So that's going to be happening. Also, if you haven't thought about it yet, maybe think about going to the hardware store and picking up some extra supplies, some things like tarps to cover roofs, because it is a bit of a storm event, ropes and things like that, so you can tie down tarps, maybe AC straps or bungees, but bungees aren't the best recommendation, especially in high wind, and things like 100-mile-an-hour tape or gaffer tape. Get onto that sort of stuff and do it now. So where I am in the southern New South Wales region, we're expecting maybe about 2 p.m. that the rain will hit. So yeah, get onto that. All right. So enough of that. Weather in Australia, it's happening. It's still happening in other parts of the world, but it's more of a concern for me here, and that's what I want to look out for. Yeah, call me Hunter again. I just got to watch out with the backyard because our area used to be a swamp. I'm actually in one of the lower points of the town that I live in, and our backyard quite routinely floods. So yeah, the drainage here isn't all that great either. Okay, so back over to Ukraine. There's a whole heap of stuff going on in the Ukraine. I'm just getting some other messages coming in. Very large. Yeah, sorry, messages always coming in from different sources that I've got. Ukraine overnight or over our night in their morning, they've declared a state of emergency throughout the country now. So that Donbass region, specifically that eastern region that I'm talking about is the Luhansk and Donetsk regions, which have Russia has said that they're their own separate countries now, the People's Republic of each one of them, or LPR, DPR. So when I quite often refer to them as LPR, DPR, or LDPR, that's what I'm talking about. But I'll just try and call it the Donbass region. That Donbass region has been under a state of emergency for years now, since like 2014, I'm pretty sure. But now they've spread it out to the entire country. They're about to ratify that through their parliament. They're even pushing through something that's similar to kind of like the Second Amendment in the US, that civilians can carry weapons on them. So things are obviously ratcheting up over there. Again, the reason why I am giving you information about the Ukraine is not it's concerning for people in the Ukraine, obviously. So we want concern for those people over there, but also how it's going to affect us in Australia, how it's going to affect the wider world. Cyber sort of stuff is the big one that I keep talking about. I heard they're rounding up their reserves. That's true. There have been a couple of reports from different sources that I've seen overnight, my different sources, that they have actually started implementing something similar to like the draft that they're pulling in, but for reserves. So they're pulling in their reserves. So they seem to be getting quite serious now, which some of the reporting coming out of the Ukraine, it almost seemed a bit flippant that their government was saying, like, don't worry about it. Like, nothing's going on here. It's not that bad. Now they seem to be sweating bullets. Russia's also closed down all their embassies and moved their people out, pulled the flags down, burnt. There's videos of them burning documents en masse, like just torching all the documents that were in those embassies and then shipping their guys out. So that's never a good sign. So, tensions seem to be getting quite hot there. And I mean, this is Russia's still doing all their reporting to say that, yep, these are independent countries now and they are calling for our help. They are begging for our help. So we are going to move in. So that's happened overnight too. Russia said, yep, we will, or Putin's trying to get it signed off by their government that they will officially say we are moving our military into those regions. On the other side, the US is saying that Russia is invading. This is the invasion. Sky is falling. Matter of hours before they take over Kiev. All the sort of stuff that they've been saying for a week and a bit now. So how does this affect us? So two things that I want you to consider about this. Ukraine is known as Europe's breadbasket. So a lot of crops coming out of there, particularly wheat, corn, and soy. Three of the big ones, and they're huge throughout the world. A lot of people obviously eat them, but a lot of those crops are also used to feed cattle and create meat for us. So if that's kind of disrupted, that can cause problems, as in supply chain problems to Europe. And I'll get onto why that's important for us in a second, and I just want to talk about the other thing that's coming through there. So there's a lot of major pipelines for gas. So gas gets pumped into Europe from Russia through Ukraine. The only other, there's a couple of other ones. There's one south and the Nord Stream in the north. So there's Nord Stream 1, and they're trying to build a second one that goes directly from Russia to Germany. Germany being one of the major consumers of that gas out of Russia. So that Nord Stream 2 just at the moment is on pause, and it looks like they're going to sort of put a cancel order on it. That's kind of a big deal. The prices, as I said, in Europe have been going up and up and up, and that's going to increase pressure. Russia's already cut off 50% of the gas going into Europe. So Germany, Italy, I think might be the second biggest consumer of the gas from Russia. And all those Eastern European states obviously use a bit too. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on gas, on crops, and also oil that's coming out of Russia. So we see oil prices increasing, or fluctuating, but increasing. So what that means for us here in Australia is that something like liquid natural gas, which we have and we produce. So let's say liquid natural gas costs $10 per unit to an Australian. So we pull it out here. We go, hey, Australians, here's liquid natural gas, $10 a unit. Now, Europe is going, hey, we're hurting here. Our people are freezing. It's cold. We actually rely on this to live and run our countries. How much can you sell it to us for? We will pay anything. We'll pay 20. We'll pay 30. Australia goes, oh, okay, well, yeah, if I can get money over there, like $30, 3 times the amount, sure, let's ship it over there. So they start doing that. And then Australians go, can we get some of that liquid natural gas for $10? And our company's like, actually, it's worth $30 now over here. So you guys can start paying $30 or maybe 25 or something like that. But that's kind of, a very oversimplified effect of how this is going to, or way that this is going to affect us as Australians. Is going to drive up prices of oil, of gas, of food potentially too, if we have to start shipping our wheat out at higher prices, or there is a higher price out there in the world. That's sort of basic economics or capitalism 101 right there. So that's what we can. That's a possible effect that's going to happen, that we're going to see increases in these prices. That also has a mixed effect for our country as a whole. So interesting article that was on news.com.au talking about possible scenarios. So it's talking about how Russia can affect Australia, and it's basically focusing on the natural gas or the gas and oil price. But they were saying they laid out 3 different scenarios for what's going to happen here. And I thought they were actually 3 pretty good scenarios, because they're 3 that I think are realistic that could happen. The first one being Russia doing a slow invasion and the effect that that's going to have on the economic system and on prices in Australia. So the slow invasion being what we're kind of seeing now, how Russia creates instability, creates a reason, slowly moves in, legitimizes everything as they're doing it, secures that area, which they've done before. This is the exact playbook that they've used multiple times in the past. So 2008, when we were looking down in Georgia, 2014 when we're looking at Crimea, and now 2022 when we're looking at this eastern part, this Donbass region. So they sit there, they secure that, and then they will start sowing discord and doing whatever they do in the further regions, perhaps in Ukraine, and very, very slowly, like years and years, they're going to continue doing that and just taking bite after bite after bite. That's a pretty likely course of action, I think, that Russia could take, in my view, at least. It certainly sits with their playbook, and again, I'm going to keep throwing out this book until people start reading it, The Shadow War. So go and read The Shadow War, and you can see that, that kind of fits with Russia's scheme and China's scheme of how they do things. The second scenario they had was the fast invasion, that they pick things up and they actually just battering ram straight in, maybe even go and try and take Kiev. This is pretty bad. Prices, supply chains, things will start going really, really crazy if they decide to do this. It is a potential that they could decide to do this, but every action has a equal and opposite reaction. And so them going in guns blazing will probably instigate a conflict of bigger proportions, which then could lead into scenario 3, which is uncontrolled war, that they kind of lose control of it. Because at the moment, Russia does have a fair amount of control of what's going on. Despite all the sanctions that have been thrown out at them, they're still forging ahead and they're doing whatever their game plan is there. If it breaks out into uncontrolled war, so it spills out, other nations get involved. US has said that they will 100% not send troops into Ukraine. But US says a lot of things. So, and war is unpredictable. So they're saying that now, but, what if Putin decides to drop a couple of tactical nukes in there, if things aren't going well for him? Will US sit back and go like, oh, okay, that's not good, but we're still not going to send troops in, or we're still not going to, step foot in there? I think they might be obliged to do something about that then. But yeah, that could spill out into neighboring countries and things like that. And this obviously has a much, much larger effect then on the world. And we'll see the economic fallout of that be a lot bigger, I think. So that's pretty much all I want to talk about today. Again, trying to focus more on Aussies, on things happening down under and what can happen to us. So those petrol prices, in all three of those scenarios, I can't see petrol prices going down too much. Yeah, so comment just got chucked in there. If China gets involved, I don't think it'll be pretty. No, I don't think so either. But China getting involved in Ukraine, I think, is not super likely. I think more likely is China using this as an opportunity for them to expand their borders, as it were, i.e. Taiwan. So focusing on that area of the world, that kind of South Pacific type movement. Yeah, all three of those scenarios, I can't see anything too great happening with things like oil prices, except that it may affect. So you've got the bigger picture of what happens in the economy in Australia, and then you've got what happens to consumers, i.e. you and me, in Australia. And I can't see it being any good for you and me in Australia, in that those Bowser prices will probably stay up and maybe go up more. That's what's going to happen. But if there is that sort of increase in prices of exporting stuff overseas, especially into the European region, so we could see Australian companies selling off their resources at a higher price point, and that technically that's good for the Australian economy. So there are silver linings here. It's not all massively doom and gloom, and it's a very, very, very complicated situation that's going on here. And I haven't really even touched on interest rates or anything like that, or inflation. Interestingly, though, I was talking about interest rates, and that article I was talking about the economics editor for a major Australian newspaper, who was basically saying this interest rate thing in Australia is not going to happen. It's all a bit of fluff. He came out with another piece that said, interest rates won't happen, and here's another reason why. They won't happen until there is a wage increase in Australia. So there needs to be significant wage increase in Australia, and then the RBA will feel comfortable with saying, okay, now let's jack up the interest rates. And I think he is correct in that summation, I think. And I think he is also correct in that Australia won't follow lockstep with, say, the US. Our inflation rates won't necessarily be what theirs are, and our interest rate hikes won't be necessarily what theirs are either. However, he did say in that article, we do need to have a look at the wage increase that's happening, and that actually came out 2 days ago on the 22nd, I'm pretty sure. So the Bureau of Statistics released the quarterly wage increase, and this quarterly wage increase in Australia to December last year was the largest we've seen, I think, in 7 years. So it's gone up. We are seeing wages increase, and we're seeing them increasing with increased velocity now. So, now that is getting paving the way, I guess, for interest rates for us to increase. So something to watch out for, especially if you are a borrower, that those interest rates may start to creep up soon. But also some good news. Like I said, I try and find things that are counter to the narrative I have running in my head, because I'm also a hopeful human being every now and then. So when I'm saying like inflation, I'm also trying to find out things that are counter to that. What could indicate that inflation isn't going to go through the roof. So fingers crossed, hey, that it doesn't happen. That's all I'm going to talk about today. So big weather events in Australia on the East Coast, a lot of water falling out of the sky. Really be careful out there. Please don't risk it. Don't be flooded crossings. Don't be trying to get across them in your cars, especially if you don't have a capable vehicle, and especially if you're not experienced in doing so. Snorkels and things like that are a must when you get starting to hit floodwater. So, like I said, you getting caught out there is not just the whole thing of it. If you get caught out there, there are other people that then have to come out and rescue you. So you're potentially putting other people at risk. So whatever it is, whatever you have to make, whatever meeting you have to get to, whatever appointment you got to get to, whatever work shift you have to do, it is not worth your life. Okay. Your life is much more valuable than that. Even if you have to piss people off, it doesn't really matter. That's my recommendation for everything. Whenever I'm teaching courses, safety and survival courses, I always tell people this: no meeting, no email that you have to write, no piece of information that you have to collect, nothing that you need to do, no equipment that you have on you is worth more than your life. So stay safe out there, guys. Keep preparing. If you haven't already, go get some wet weather gear. But until next time, Semper Paratus.